Hello there, folks. Mark here again, running you through another bit of information here with the Placer.ai platform. So I already recorded a tutorial where we looked at the property reports for the Kendall Yards night market, and I've kind of recreated that here where we've set up our time frame and we're only looking at Wednesday nights from 4 to 10 p.m. all last summer. So from here, we already covered kind of just the overview of the information that you can get from the property reports, but what I want to spend the time here today doing is diving into the demographics. So if we come over here to the demographics tab there on the left hand side, then we can start really getting a pretty fine-grained view of what types of households show up to the Kendall Yards night market. So as we scroll down here, the default kind of view is that Placer, they'll give us kind of this expanding radius where 30% of the foot traffic and then 50 and then 70% where that's coming from. And you can play around with all those thresholds and you can kind of toggle them on and off. But I think for just the sake of the example, I'm just going to set this for 100% of the foot traffic within that 50-mile radius. And then from there, as we scroll down here just a bit, there are a number of different data sets that we can dig into, and census level data, spending pattern data for the households that show up to the Kendall Yards night market. So there's oceans, if not galaxies, of data to splash around in here, but a couple in particular that are worth pointing out. So one, this mosaic data from Experian, we've had access to that through another tool for a number of years. And that's just Experian Credit Reporting Agency, just sitting on trillions of consumer transactions. So anytime any of us swipe a credit card, Experian gets a ping, and they know within a few milliseconds who you are and where you live and what you just bought. So what they do with all of that data is they take every household in the US and they dump us into one of, I think it's 72 different household segments. So that's super helpful on the marketing side of things. But also when we got our license to Placer, we opted for this extra Spatial.ai add-in here. And the guy who developed Spatial, he was kind of a student of Experian for a number of years. And this is kind of his platform that he came up with. That's very similar to that Experian data, but I would say even more granular. So being able to see that for the folks that are showing up to the Kendall Yards night market, it looks like it's our C group here. It's the upper suburban diverse families. They're making up just over 17% of the foot traffic. And the way to read through these bar charts over here, if we all went to the night market at the exact same rate, we would all have a score of 100, as that being the average. So for our C group, with a score of 191, that means they're 1.91 times more likely than average to be showing up at the Kendall Yards night market. So within each one of these, now that we know that it's our C group that kind of forms the bulk of this audience, if we go to this segment families and drill in here to the C group, then it looks like it's our good life citizens that kind of make up the bulk of that biggest group. If we had time, it might be worth kind of scanning through all of these other ones, because combined our C group made up the biggest chunk, but there might be an outlier here or there that might come close. Yeah, looks like our college kids actually slightly outpace our good life citizens in terms of who's showing up to the night market. But for the sake of this example, let's just focus here on our good life citizens. And if you're wondering what is a good life citizen, seems like we should just be able to click there to get kind of the more detailed information. But what we have to do is come up here under this advanced reports, and when we open that up, go to this Spatial.ai option there on the left hand side. So here are I think it's 80 different household segments that Spatial puts us into. And overall structure here is really high income households here at the top of the scale. And then as you work your way down, there are some kind of crosswinds that come into play here in terms of, do you live in an urban setting or are you out in the countryside somewhere. But overall thrust is high income at the top, and then as you work your way down, it tends to get progressively lower income. So that's kind of the structure there. But for our good life citizens, let's get back up to here. All right, so there's the profile for our good life citizens, and they tend to be between 45 and 54. They like dogs and beer and sports and the outdoors. They watch Seinfeld. They drive Subarus. Kind of some income ranges there. The hashtags that they've been using over the last couple of weeks. Retail establishments where they over-index. So they're, 2.57 times more likely than average to be showing up at J.Jill. And yeah, so a lot of this is for either kind of national or regional chains, but should we have the need, we can dive in and make it a little bit more local. But this data just goes on and on of what stores they go to, channels you should be using to reach out to them, the websites that they visit, who do they follow in the online world. So if we dig in here to their influencers, then yeah, it's Glennon Doyle and Kai Risdall and Steve Inskeep, so kind of the NPR crew. But then from there, the causes that they're associated with and the political influencers that they follow, the comedians that they like. So it gets to kind of a silly level of detail here after a while. But you have all of that data for pretty much you have all of this for every single one of those household segments. So there's that. Also, just know that we can map all of this data so that we can find where the concentrations of these households across the nation. So if we zoom in here to Spokane, so we can map these households at a couple different levels. So either at this DMA, which is designated marketing area, which is basically TV broadcast regions. So for us, it's all eastern Washington into northern Idaho and some slivers of Montana and Oregon. But that's what the DMA is, and then zip code, and then census block group. That's usually roughly about 400-ish households to 800-ish households. So that's kind of the most fine-grained view there. So if we're trying to figure out, all right, where do our good life citizens get clustered up on a map, we can do that. And being able to see that, okay, here on the South Hill, and actually let me turn on the regular map, because even though the contrast isn't great, it does a better job of kind of showing where these households are. So this particular census block right here, that's Grand, there's 37th, there's 42nd with the Rocket Market right there. So that particular census block group, right at 70% of them, of those households there, are good life citizens. But just over here on the bluff, a few blocks away, it's down to 17%. Right around the corner at the Manitou Golf Club, it's effectively down to 0. Completely different set of household types that are located right there. So if you're trying to market to good life citizens and you're spending any time or money on marketing efforts in that area right there, it's just money wasted, not going to get you where you need to go. Other fine folks live there, but just not your C1s. So that gets used a ton for site location types of questions, as well as marketing efforts. Where do you spend your marketing dollars? That can really help address those particular topics. The Explore option here. Here, not quite an infinite number of data points to play around with here, but one step dialed back from that. So what this allows us to do is sift through a ton of credit card spending data, as well as some census level data, and also national retail chain information. So if we are trying to figure out, okay, let's just use this as the example. So who goes to Trader Joe's the most across the nation? And if we change that to the segments, all right, it's our satellite scions and our exclusive exurbs those are the two household types nationwide that are going to Trader Joe's the most. But we can narrow this down to the DMA level to say, all right, here in the Spokane DMA, who's going to Trader Joe's the most? And now we've got our Good Life citizens showing up here. And then also our Northern Lights. Those are the folks here locally who are going to Trader Joe's the most. So that can be super helpful. Also, if we come over here to this little grid icon, what this allows us to do is basically take any one of these metrics, and there are thousands of them, and basically plot them against any other metric. So we could say, all right, who goes to Trader Joe's, and are they on TikTok, or are they on Facebook? So we can figure out which social media platforms we might want to put our focus on. Also, we could say, all right, who goes to Trader Joe's and REI? Is that an overlapping audience? And then what we're looking for here are households kind of the further to the right and the further up. Those will be our best matches. So it looks like, oh yeah, actually it's our Good Life citizens. Once again, that's kind of the peak of those two curves, at least here in the Spokane DMA, for folks that are going to REI as well as Trader Joe's. So ton of application there. This append option, what this allows you to do is if you have a list of household addresses, then so if it's shipping logs, if you've been shipping product out across the nation, or if it's a donor list for a nonprofit, as long as they're just household addresses, upload them here, save them as a CSV file, then toss them in here. And then what Placer will, or actually Spatial will, produce is a report that looks like this. And this was a list of likely Spokane area dog owners, but let's pretend like this is your list of clients or donors. And being able to see of the 400 addresses that we uploaded, 28% of them, just under 28%, are the Rust Renter household types, even though they make up less than 2% of the local population. So they're over-indexing more than 15 times. So that can be super helpful to get a snapshot of who your donors are, who your customers are. And this especially comes into play in the online world, where if you have a brick and mortar store, you have the advantage of seeing your clients pulling up in your parking lot, and you can often kind of piece together a pretty comprehensive story about who they are and age and income and how many kids and what they drive. But if you're operating purely in the online world, that can get really opaque and really hard to figure out who it is that you're dealing with, and this can really help solve some of that. So that's what's happening with the append option. The analyze, they basically just took this and moved it over to the explore page, so I'm guessing that will go away here sometime soon. But the activate, this kind of closes the loop here. So if we go to create a new audience, then Spatial, it'll tie in directly to a number of different platforms. But let's say you've figured out that our Good Life citizens, maybe they're on Reddit a ton. I don't know if they are or not, but we can figure that out. So what we can do is come in and start creating a campaign looking at our Good Life citizens. And for these campaigns, we can narrow it down to either the state level or DMA. It would be nice if we could get more granular than that, but at least for now, that's where it stops. But we can throw in a number of other filters. So if we know kind of the peak of the curve for our Good Life citizens are mid-40s to mid-50s, we can throw out those outliers. Also income ranges that you might want to be focused on, education levels, male, female, married, yes, no, kids, yes, no. So with those filters selected, then we've got just under 3,100 Good Life citizen contacts here in the Spokane DMA that match all of those filters. And when we run this, what we'll get is a report that looks like this. And this is an encrypted list of email accounts so that are associated with those C1 households with all those various filters that we put into that search. And in this case, it's formatted in a way so that when it gets uploaded into Reddit, Reddit knows how to decode these encrypted emails. And then if it's an email that has a profile and an account on Reddit, when you run your marketing campaign, your ads are going just to those specific email accounts. And if it's an email that Reddit doesn't recognize and they don't know who they are, and they're not on the Reddit platform, they just drop off. And yeah, they kind of just fall by the wayside. But this allows you to get super targeted, super specific about who it is that you're trying to reach out to with your marketing campaigns. So that is the flyby of Spatial.ai. And just kind of think of Spatial as this tool that kind of nests within Placer. And yeah, it's pretty powerful. So I know that this tutorial is a little bit longer than I like to make them, but it's about as short as I can make it and kind of be able to cover all the ground that I wanted to cover. But just know that there's a ton more information and utility and functionality that we can dig into here, especially within Placer. But with that, we'll stop there, and happy marketing.